major escalation in the war in the Middle East, as Israel says its forces are now fighting Hamas inside Gaza City. Now, this signals a new phase of the conflict that's already killed thousands, with civilians bearing the brunt of the violence. Dan Senor is a co-author of a new book. It's called The Genius of Israel: The Surprising Resilience of a Divided Nation in a Turbulent World. Now, it went to press before the deadly Hamas attacks in Israel on October 7th. Senor, we should point out, was also an advisor to the George W. Bush administration during the Iraq War. Dan, good morning. It's so good to have you here at this time. And can you believe the timing of your book at this particular time? When you wrote it, this, of course, was not going on.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating to me about the book, at the time you were talking about Israel was deeply divided within itself. There was a lot of internal conflict. But you said Israel will come together. You didn't think it would come together under these circumstances.
We partly wrote the book to remind people that Israel, we believe, has the healthiest, happiest society in the world. There's tremendous solidarity there. This is a country where most people serve in national service with one another, with people from all walks of life. It's a country where the overwhelming majority of its citizens have a weekly ritual, the Friday night Shabbat dinner together,
yes,
which we call, it's like having a Thanksgiving dinner every week. And when you have these building blocks, these sort of societal shock absorbers built into the system, even when the country is at each other's throats politically, the country still holds together. And we're seeing it now flourish tragically in the darkness of this post-war or this war period that Israel is in right now. We didn't anticipate the war, but we knew the country would rally together if faced with a real challenge.
Will you say that they don't Israelis don't operate on individual think, they operate on group think in all areas of their lives?
If I could, Gayle, point to one lesson for the West and for the United States, it is this. If you look at the way we incentivize our young people to succeed in this world, the college application process, it's all about individual excellence. It's all about how you perform, your grades, your board scores, you. And you look at the Israeli system. From when the children are young, it is all about we. It is all about the group. In schooling, it's not about personalized education, which is what's in vogue here. It's about group learning. The scouting movement, there's a scouts movement there that most young Israeli kids participate in. And then, of course, there's the military, which is where people in their formative years have to go serve, and they want to serve. The way you succeed in every stage of life is by being part of a team, being part of a group, and being part of a community. So the system doesn't care how excellent your individual talents are. If you can't work as part of a group, you won't succeed. And the moment you are rewarded for working as part of a group and a team, it changes the whole culture of the place.
So the mystery at the center of the book that motivates the book is answering the question of why Israel, this country born out of trauma, which has faced decades of war, rates so highly in terms of mental health, physical health, and economic success. The question now in the world is, for a lot of people, what is Israel doing in Gaza? Why is it going so hard, so aggressively in the face of so much suffering? I think this book, and the reason I really wanted to have this conversation, it helps explain the Israeli psychology and the Israeli culture that's behind this military push. What would you say is relevant for people to understand what Israel is thinking right now in Gaza?
Israel was not prepared for a quasi-genocidal attack in its country on October 7th. It simply was not prepared. And I think the Israeli government, for years now, over 4 different prime ministers, believed that they could coexist with Hamas in Gaza. They would have skirmishes from time to time, but they would coexist with them. And they recognize now that's over. They cannot coexist with Hamas in Gaza. And then they look around their borders and they say, wait, if Hamas was willing to do what they did on October 7th, who's to say that Hezbollah in the north, in southern Lebanon, wouldn't try to do the same thing? And who's to say that there couldn't be increased radicalization among some segments of the Palestinian community in the West Bank? That's a third front. And what's Iran up to, which talks openly about wiping out the state of Israel and wiping out the Jewish people? So Israel, in this tiny country, the size of the state of New Jersey, a little over 9 million people, there's no country in the world that has all of this on its borders. When you're in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, the southern border where Hamas is, or the northern border where Hezbollah is not 6,000 miles away, which is like what we dealt with Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a 2 or 3 hour drive, and so it's just changed the whole mindset.
Dan, I mean, one of my worries is if violence can bring violence back in return, right? Violence is answered with violence. We've seen this here. I'm not saying the sides were equivalent, but violence can beget violence. The Israeli historian Yuval Harari has made the point that it's possible, and hard to see, but possible, to be both the victim of that violence and the perpetrator of it. Are you concerned that we're seeing that in Israel now and will continue to?
I think that there was a sense over the last number of years that Israel was weak in the minds of Hamas and Iran and others who attacked it. I think part of the weakness was perceived because of the internal division we're just talking about and other reasons. Israel just seemed to be a little softer. Yeah. And I think if Israel responds strongly and actually takes out these threats, it sends a message. Israel's responding aggressively in Hamas, as I think they should, to both minimize Israeli casualties, civilian casualties, and minimize Palestinian civilian casualties.
But there's still so many civilian
as there will be in war.
Yes.
But Israel is going out of its way.
To wipe out Hamas, how should the U.S. balance their support for Israel while we are all seeing, the world is all seeing, these civilian casualties happen on a large scale?
So I think the response has to be that Hamas has been responsible for maximum Israeli casualties, 1,400 plus on October 7th. That was their strategy, was to maximize Israeli civilian casualties. And as they are open about, they also want Palestinian civilian casualties. Hamas does. That is why they co-locate their armaments and their military capabilities in hospitals and UN-run schools, because they believe innocent Palestinians in Gaza getting killed is a PR win for Hamas. So Hamas is the only actor here that wants Israeli civilians dead and Palestinian civilians dead. Now, we have to explain that to the world, because to your point, these images are very powerful and they're very depressing.
Yes.
But it would be like if Russia co-located a rocket launcher next to a Russian orphanage and Ukraine had to take out the Russian rocket launcher.
Yeah.
We wouldn't say it's Ukraine's fault. Russia is the one that's trying to maximize casualties on both sides. It's the same thing with Hamas.
Look, you can't understand this war without understanding Israel, and I think this book helps people do that.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Perfect timing. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, but perfect timing and very well done. Thank you, Dan Senor. The Genius of Israel is on sale now wherever you like to buy your books.